Yeah, hi everyone, welcome. Just gonna jump in, get started. Let me see. So as Rohini said, we're from Advocates for Children. AFC is an independent agency that protects the rights of all New York City students, founded in 1971 by parents of students with disabilities. Our mission has expanded over the years, as has our services, but currently the services we provide, there's a number of them. We have a helpline. The number is there on the slide. They're answering calls Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We also provide free legal services to low-income families. We have a number of guides and resources that are available on our website. We do workshops and trainings like this one, and then we also do policy advocacy and impact litigation work. As Rohini said, we are from the School Justice Project, the two of us, which is within AFC. The School Justice Project does a variety of work. Mostly we're working with students who have court system related involvement, are facing school suspensions, are excluded from school due to behavioral needs that are unmet, bullying behavior, and then we're helping these students get the support that they need to address their academic and behavioral needs and get the support they need to succeed in school. So this is our roadmap for today. I know it looks like a lot, but as Rohini said, this will be on our YouTube as well as on our website, and then you will also get the slides afterwards so you can refer back. But continuing on, so we're going to start with what we know. So we know that youth in juvenile and or child welfare systems are among the most educationally disadvantaged of all students and are often overage and undercredited, meaning that for where they are with their age, they do not have the same number of credits like relative to their peers. We also know that nationally, nearly 2/3 of youth in the court system are Black and Latinx. And we also know that about 65 to 70% of youth involved with the juvenile justice system have a disability, particularly a learning, emotional, or mental health disability. We also know that students who are suspended are more likely to miss class, be held back a grade, be suspended again, not graduate, and ultimately have juvenile justice system involvement. And this is what we refer to as the school to prison pipeline. This is not to say that all students who are suspended are going to have future juvenile justice involvement, but we know that students who are suspended are more likely to be on this path. And then we also want to note that Black students with disabilities who qualify for special education are suspended and expelled at especially high rates. So next we're going to move into the types of placement that we're discussing today. So we're really talking about three buckets: secure placement, non-secure placement, and limited secure placement. Now, non-secure placement and limited secure placement are known as close to home programs, which I'll talk about more in a moment. And I want to note that we're specifically talking about New York City placements kind of run by ACS. So we're not talking about the Office of Children and Family Services placements, though I'm going to mention OCFS later in the presentation just briefly, and those are primarily outside of New York City. And we're also not discussing students who are at Rikers Island attending East River Academy, though again, I'll briefly mention it later in the presentation. But if you know students who are struggling with issues at OCFS or Rikers, you can reach out to me and our school justice team for more information. But moving into these three buckets we're talking about: secure, non-secure, and limited secure. We'll start with secure. So currently there are two main facilities that youth are sent to in New York City. There's Horizon, which is located in the Bronx, and there is Crossroads, which is located in Brooklyn. So youth in both of these facilities are under the care of ACS, meaning that these facilities are run by ACS. But the youth who are placed in these facilities are attending school run by Passages Academy, which is a New York City Department of Education District 79 school. These facilities are more restrictive in their security features, and the youth aren't allowed to leave. So they're attending Passages Academy at the facilities at Horizon or at Crossroads. And these facilities mirror a traditional jail setting in terms of their security features. Then we have the close to home detention placements. So there are two types, as I mentioned. There's limited secure placement and there's non-secure placement. Both non-secure placement and limited secure placement facilities are operated by nonprofit providers that contract with ACS. They're spread throughout the 5 boroughs. They're run as group homes with anywhere from 6 to 20 youth in each. One difference between them is that youth in limited secure placements are attending school within the facility, whereas youth in non-secure placement are attending school at Passages Academy sites within the community. And again, Passages is that District 79 DOE school. So some of the information we know about Passages, so students who are male, Black, have disabilities, or are in the foster care system are dramatically overrepresented at Passages Academy. And that's as compared to all New York City students in grades 7 to 12. And you can see that represented in the bar chart here. We also know that compared to all New York City students in grades 7 to 12, youth at Passages are almost twice as likely to have learning disabilities, are 3 times as likely to have an other health impairment classification, and more than 17 times as likely to be labeled as students with emotional disabilities. And again, it's represented in the bar chart there. So now we're going to move into the general rights of students in secure and non-secure detention. And again, we're talking about these New York City placements. So we want to highlight that students have rights both before, during, and after their involvement in the juvenile justice system. So before, students should be provided the critical behavioral and mental health services and interventions that they need that could potentially prevent future contact with the legal system. During their time involved in the juvenile justice system and while in detention or placement, students should be able to regularly attend school. They should receive the supports and services they need to learn. And then after, as they're transitioning out of placement or detention, they should be provided transition supports that they need to re-engage in school and return to their community. Now, in terms of the rights that students have that are general education rights that students continue to have while they're in placement, they have the right to attend school. So students must be enrolled in school until the end of the school year when they turn 17, and then they may stay in school. So they have the right to stay in school until the end of the year that they turn 21 or until they get a diploma. And there are 2 exceptions to that. Students with IEPs can stay in school until the end of the year when they turn 22. And then students who are over 17 and absent for 20 consecutive school days can be discharged as long-term absent, LTA. But in order for this to happen, the school has to follow a process. There has to be a planning interview, and then students have the right to re-enroll in school until they're age 21. Oh, yeah, there's that information. Now, enrolling in school, so if your grades K through 8, you can contact the zone school if there is one, and if no zone school, contact the Family Welcome Center. And if it's a high school age student, you contact the Family Welcome Center for that enrollment. And if you need help with this process, you can contact AFC. This is the promotion criteria for high school students. You can see here the number of credits, minimum number of credits to be able to be promoted from one grade to the next. And it ends with to be able to graduate, you have to earn 44 credits in the right subjects. So we wanted to highlight this because it is relevant to students who are in secure and non-secure placements in New York City. And then we're actually going to move now into the rights of court-involved youth more specifically. So students at Passages must be given an education if they're middle school students that puts them on track for promotion, and if they're a high school student, puts them on track for a high school diploma. And that means that students at Passages must be given grade level work. If they're middle school students, they should be able to take citywide tests, and if they're high school students, they must be able to sit for their Regents exams. And then, as noted, Passages is a DOE school. So all credits that are earned while at Passages go on a student's DOE transcript and then should also be transferred once a student transitions out of detention or placement and is re-enrolled in school in the community. Now, getting into the rights of court-involved youth with disabilities. So students in both secure detention and close to home programs have the right to receive special education services. And Students with IEPs have the right to receive special education services that are similar to what is on their IEPs, and I will go into that more in a moment. But the parent of a student with an IEP may ask Passages to reevaluate their child, and then the parent of a student without an IEP who thinks that their child may have a disability may ask Passages for an initial evaluation. And parents whose children are in OCSF facilities or ACS facilities who don't attend Passages also have these rights. And then continuing on with the rights of court-involved youth with disabilities. So the process is that Passages Academy must get a student's IEP within 5 days of the student attending Passages. And then they're supposed to use that IEP to plan the services that the student will get during their time at Passages. And so Passages should be reaching out to parents and working to develop what's called a special education plan. Now, this is what is similar to an IEP, so it's not exactly the same. There's this understanding that because Passages is in a different setting with different resources, they can't provide exactly what is in an IEP, but they should be providing something similar. And so the meeting that's supposed to be had within 30 days of the student's admission to Passages is to develop this special education plan, and parents have the right to participate. This process is also what must occur for students who are 21 and under with IEPs who enter Rikers and begin attending East River Academy. Though I want to note that to begin attending East River Academy, students who are at Rikers have to fill out something called a Request for Educational Services form and turn that in. So now we're going to move into the rights of court-involved youth who are transitioning back into the community. So students have the right to attend their former schools if there are no court orders in place that prevent their attendance. And then if a student transitions out of placement mid-school year, they should be placed in the same classes they were taking while at Passages once they're back in the community. Continuing on with the rights of court-involved youth transitioning back. Students at Passages, whether in close to home or secure placement, should be given something called a transition specialist. And the transition specialist is responsible for coordinating education planning and should help support the student's return into the community for 6 months after the student is released. And then students who attend Passages should get something called a transition plan. And this includes short-term goals for the student support network, and the student's next school placement. And again, I want to note that students at Rikers East River Academy should also get a transition specialist to help with this process. Now, transitioning from close to home specifically, so not the secure placement, but close to home, in addition to that transition specialist that they get through Passages, each student transitioning from close to home should have a placement or permanency specialist assigned. That's through the nonprofit that's operating their close to home facility. And that placement or permanency specialist is, again, developing a plan for the student's reentry. They should be working alongside the DOE and the ACS education unit to plan for the youth's education reentry plans specifically. They should remain in communication with the youth's home school to ensure a smooth transition. And then specialists should also coordinate with the DOE and the Committee on Special Education, the CSE, where appropriate, to ensure that necessary evaluations are completed and submitted, that the meetings have occurred, and that the youth's grade and credit status is clearly articulated. And that's to ensure kind of continuity of education as they transition back into the community and to their school in the community. Continuing on, so specialists should also work alongside the DOE to ensure that appropriate school placement and transportation have been arranged. And then specialists may use the youth's last home visit to escort the youth and family to the DOE enrollment center with required documentation and take additional next steps to ensure a youth is immediately re-enrolled in an appropriate placement upon reentry to prevent delay. And then when there are unusual or special circumstances that prevent the parent from accompanying the youth to the enrollment office, the NSP case planner or ACS placement permanency specialist can act as the parent if the parent signs an authorization form. So we wanted to highlight that as well. Moving into transitioning from secure placement. So Youth in secure detention have limited resources for education reentry planning when compared to youth in close to home programs. So each student in a secure detention facility is assigned an ACS case manager. The case manager can offer help and be a resource to parents of youth who are transitioning out of secure detention. The case manager can assist with getting a student's transcripts and contacting someone at the DOE to help with placement. But unfortunately, parents are not provided with as much assistance. So we like to let people know that parents can visit their local family welcome center once a youth has re-entered into the community to get assistance with enrollment. So then we're going to move into some common issues that we see. So we see that the DOE often fails to provide students with school placement even after they are released. So we mentioned all of the transition specialists that are had, and that's to ensure that there is continuity and that there aren't these delays with school placement, but it's something we still see, and it often creates a large gap between the students' time at home and actually going back to school once they're back home. We also see that once released, students struggle with receiving credits or grades earned while attending Passages Academy. Remember, Passages is a DOE school, and so the credits that they're earning should be on their DOE transcript and transferred to their new schools, but this is something we often see doesn't happen. We also see Passages Academy staff fail to provide completed evaluations and IEP, SEP updates that note students' progress or regression if that's happening. And then we also see that once released, students wish to explore alternative pathways to graduation, but parents have limited resources to getting students enrolled once they've re-entered. So if any of these issues are issues that you encounter as a parent or as a provider, you see young people or families encountering, you can contact AFC about these issues and our school justice project in particular. And that's whether they're coming from secure or close to home detention. We work with youth transitioning out of both placements. So then our takeaways. So I think the
Well,
key
Elise,
takeaway.
that's, I just
Oh,
wanted to pause for a
oh,
second and see, since we do have quite a bit of time left, and I know
sorry,
we're
I
like
almost
nearing
sped through
the
that.
end of our presentation. I just wanted to pause to see if anybody had any questions. I did answer one question in the chat. I know Carrie, was asking if a student themselves can request an evaluation. So yes, a student can request, what they're sort of doing is like requesting for a referral for special education or an evaluation, but special education rights are held by the parent. And so the parent will ultimately have to sign off on a referral and then consent to evaluate because they're the ones that hold special education rights. And then like in order to have an IEP meeting, a parent would need to be present. I think Elise had mentioned this. There are circumstances certainly where a parent is not, yes. So even if the student is over the age of 18. And so I believe if they're over the age of 18, they can consent to evaluations, but to actually like hold the IEP meeting and start receiving services, typically if a student's under 21, the parent still has to be involved and consent to provide services. We should say that we have had this circumstance before in cases, and the CSC, the Committee on Special Education, is able to, if the parent's not available or not willing to participate, they're able to appoint like a surrogate parent just for that purpose of that IEP meeting. If a student is court involved and they're working with an education specialist, through ACS, that's also a circumstance where the education specialist could work with the family to obtain, the ability to consent and participate in an IEP meeting. Yeah. And does anybody have any other questions? I did want to just mention before we go into the key takeaways as well that on our website, AFC's website, we have a number of different resources that that could be helpful to distribute to young people and to parents of court-involved youth. We have a court-involved youth guide, as well as a one-pager on education rights for court-involved youth, as well as our special education materials and guides that are helpful on the special education process. But we do have a specific court-involved youth guide that hopefully will be helpful and can be distributed. And then the other thing I wanted to mention that Elise had pointed out in the beginning, just in terms of who is at Passages and the information that she presented there on some of the demographics. We did just in the fall release a report on court-involved youth called Reconnecting to Opportunity, and where we sort of go through and analyze the data that we received through a reporting bill that was passed last year on who is attending Passages and sort of some of the educational outcomes, and specifically the issue of not getting enough support and when transitioning back to the community. And so we'd encourage you, if you're interested in this topic, to also look at that because there's some information on there on the population and sort of what we would recommend in terms of policy changes. So, all right, I don't see any other questions, so I can turn it back to you, Elise, to.
Sure, yeah. So some things I forgot to mention. The first is that it's AFC's position that the triannual evaluations and the annual IEP meetings should be happening even when a student is in placement, and even while they have an SEP, though we recognize that that does not always happen. So that's something that AFC could be contacted about. And then, since I have some time, since I went a little fast, I have some additional information I wanted to provide about students who are transitioning from OCFS facilities back to New York City. So, students in OCFS facilities are technically discharged from the DOE when they go to an OCSF facility and they're attending school at the individual facilities. So when they return to the city, the credits they earn don't automatically go onto their DOE transcript. And the principal of the DOE school that they attend once they are returning to the community has to review the transcript from their OCFS facility and decide whether to grant credit. And students at OCFS facilities still must also be able to take promotional tests and their Regents exams. So that's something else I wanted to highlight. And then I know there had been a question prior to the webinar that was submitted about Rikers. So as I mentioned, East River Academy, if you're under 21 or under 22, if you have an IEP, you do not already have a diploma or a high school equivalency, and you've been in jail or expect to be in jail for more than 10 days, you have the right to enroll at East River Academy. And as I mentioned, you have to fill out that request for educational services form. So that's a bit more information about OCFS and Rikers. But we can move to the key takeaways unless anyone has any other questions. Are there any others?
I see one question here about is there a lack of transparency that families run into in gaining support through the BIP process? Are you talking, just to clarify, and you could put your answer in the chat, are you talking about the behavior intervention plan process when they're receiving behavior supports? I'm assuming that is what you're discussing, and that's so, yes, correct. Okay, so yes, so and I can, for those that might not be aware, a behavior intervention plan is a behavior support that can be requested if a student is exhibiting behaviors that are impacting their ability to participate in their education in the classroom or disrupting other students. And typically what needs to be done first before a behavior intervention plan is put in place is a parent needs to request and a school needs to do a functional behavior assessment. And so, yes, I think we do experience with some schools a lack of transparency in terms of both, well, first, it's important to note that parents should be and must be part of the FBA and BIP process. There is a section on both of those where there should be, input from the parent. And so a parent should be consulted. The FBA is typically done through a series of observations of the students to try to determine, the behavior, the target behavior, what's happening before, the antecedent, and then the consequence. And so sort of the reason why the behavior is occurring. And the parent should be there to also discuss like what the student's triggers are and sort of, what they observe about the student as well. And so if that's not happening, and then similarly in the BIP process, there's both, there should be an opportunity for a parent to give input on the development of the plan, as well as when you create a BIP, there needs to be a review every like at there needs to be a regular review at a point determined by the team that's creating the BIP. And so, like any other special education evaluation and support, the parents' input is crucial and they should be involved. And so that's something that you can talk to the school psychologist about or the school-based support team if this is happening in the community setting. And if it's happening, if this is a BIP that's for a student that's in Passages, then reaching out to the Passages guidance counselor or social worker to try to, to sort of make sure that a parent is part of that process. I hope that answered that question. But let me see. Yeah, I don't think we have anything else. So you can move into the.
Great. Yeah, we'll go to the key takeaways that we've pulled out from this presentation. So again, students must attend school if they're within the compulsory school age, which is 17, and education cannot be denied. And remember, they have the right to attend school up until they're 21, or if they have an IEP, 22. Students have the right to attend the school they previously attended prior to detention or placement, so long as there are no court orders preventing them attending that school. Parents have the right to be informed and participate in IEP, SEP meetings, or general education meetings pertaining to their child's progress while attending Passages Academy, be it in secure placement or the close to home programs. And then students have the right to receive special education services in both secure and close to home placement. Some additional takeaways. An ACS specialist or NSP case manager, as well as a Passages transition specialist, should be assisting students and family with education-related planning for reentry. And remember, that's again for both secure and non-secure placements, though it looks a little different between the two, and there's more support for the non-secure placements. And then parents can connect with the school psychologist at Passages to request an evaluation or a reevaluation if their child has or may have a disability. And then again, parents can contact AFC at any point if there are education-related issues while a student's in placement or once the student reenters into the community and transitions out of placement. We also wanted to provide some DOE transition support contacts. We have Crystal Wright at Passages Academy. And again, you'll get these slides, so you'll have this information. And then we also have District 79 Family and Community Empowerment Administrator. And again, their contact information is there. And you'll get these slides. And
And
then,
we should say, reaching out to if you're working with a young person or if you're the parent of a young person who is in placement and you're not getting any information or you're having trouble reaching, the staff at Passages that is assigned to support them, then these are folks that you can reach out to try to get more information and to try to really figure out and help them like sort of advocate to create a plan for the young person when they're coming out of school. Sometimes what we see is, young people are just told to go to the Family Welcome Center, or families are told to go to the Family Welcome Center and just, they're, of course, they have a right to return to the school that they were attending before they were placed in detention or placement if it's within a year. But for many reasons that might not be an option for them. And so again, like it takes a lot of persistence and advocacy to make sure that a young person's not just discharged without like without an appropriate school placement. And especially for students that have IEPs, again, it's really crucial to get that, to try to advocate to get that support in place before they actually start school or maybe very soon thereafter. We should also note that it's often that young people do really well at Passages. It's a very supportive environment. The staff is incredibly skilled and knowledgeable in terms of supporting young people that are, system involved, but unfortunately that's not the case when they return to their community school and for a lot of in a lot of different, different settings and for a lot of students. And so again, it's very individualized, but it requires a lot of advocacy and support. And this is where, you can contact our helpline, you can contact us to get more information and to try to troubleshoot and figure out what different school options might work for a young person that's transitioning out.
Yes, and there's our helpline number and then our general email as well as my email for court involved youth and school justice project. So yeah, are there any
I
other questions? Oh, sorry, good.
I see a question in the chat. Do you see a lot of stigmatizing with students with and without IEPs? Are you talking like in the within the court ordered setting or just in the community? I mean, I think in within and outside of court involvement. Oh, so both. So yeah, I mean, I think certainly like, there's always I don't know if we necessarily see I think that there is potentially a stigma in terms of a student having an IEP, in terms of like expectations of sort of like where and what they can achieve. And but there are ways to prevent that, and there are ways to make sure that, an IEP is supposed to have really challenging objectives for a young person. It shouldn't just mean that they're sort of pushed along a certain track. And I do think more recently there is a lot more awareness and education around, learning disabilities, students with mental health and social emotional needs. And um, I certainly think like it could be like a really empowering tool to get students support, and should be an empowering tool to get students support. And so, um, yeah, I don't necessarily see stigmatizing maybe in the way that like traditionally it has been. Yeah, like students should not be treated differently because they have IEPs. Again, it's just a matter of them receiving the support that they need in order to make progress. So